Hello and welcome back to another day in the arena. It's me, it's CGB, and today in the arena we are going to play one of the decks that didn't pan out from the Azorius color challenge. So by now you've seen the Azorius Super Friends deck. Some of you might have been hoping for a full-on control deck. I know I have some control-loving mages, and this is one of the decks that I tried and it didn't quite get there. But we can showcase it today. Forget those Esper cards, who needs them? Thought Erasure, Fooey, who needs a really great discard hand disruption spell that smooths your draw? Not this guy. Instead, we're blue and white only, running the full 4 copies of cards like Absorb, and also running cards like Warrant Warden. We also have 4 Ops and 4 Revitalize to get through our deck and let us run 24 land instead of 26 to 28 land, which is usually what you need to hit your land drops in a deck of this nature, which basically is always in miss land drop or and you die territory. Our main card advantage engine is Search for Azcanta. I'm not running Chemist's Insight because I find against red decks you cast that card and you die. Oh man, I really don't like Chemist's Insight in the format, and our mana base is good enough to run Memorial to Genius, so I'm hoping that's an adequate replacement. So far, I haven't been too disappointed, but I do get it. If you can't live without the Insight, get the Insight. I also have 2 Blink of an Eyes in the deck, which I like better than a card like Ixalan's Binding, which forces me to tap out on my turn. I try to do as little of that as possible. We're leaning on removal like Seal Away pretty hard, as well as the removal side of Warrant Warden early in the game, as well as Revitalize to bridge the gap to Settle and Cleansing Nova. So, what are the win cons, as I'm sure many of you will spam in the comments? Well, we all know that Teferi tuck and mill you out. If you don't, it's kind of degenerate. Yes, you -3 to target your own Teferi, and then you draw it every turn, so you can't run out of cards in your deck, but over time the opponent runs out of cards in their deck. It's not the only way we have to win, however. We can make a 4/4 blue and white Sphinx creature token with Flying and Vigilance off Warrant Warden, and beat the opponent to death with it. But yes, before the comments start raging some more, a good amount of our games will come down to people conceding once they see a Teferi ticking up. It does happen. This is Control, and I'm not going to go on too much of a rant. You're all entitled to your own opinions. Some of you are adults, some of you are not, but especially you adults out there are certainly entitled to however you want to approach a game. I would just say to educate anybody out there who's angry and doesn't understand why this card exists, because Control is also part of the game. All right, let's go play some battles. This hand has a pair of Revitalize and a Warrant Warden and a Negate, so a little something for everything, and hopefully the Revitalize will help us hit our land drops and play bigger and better stuff. Blue mana, you say? Off to the races. Blue-red. Blue-red search. Well, I know exactly how that goes. I have no idea what's about to happen. They keep on top. Alright. I was wondering if they were a Drake deck or what was going to come next. I think I'll keep land. I shouldn't have too much trouble filling my graveyard with Revitalize and friends. I feel physically attacked when the Search for Azcanta trigger flies up at me. Like, this is happening! Like, yes, I know. And it's not that big of a deal. Come on. Just flying that Search for Azcanta trigger at me. Alright. May I Revitalize? Sure. I don't know why you do that in response to my Revitalize, but who knows? Maybe they're going to spell Pierce a Revitalize. I think I can graveyard this. I'm not sure what our opponent's threat package is like, but I don't need an answer right now. That part I'm pretty sure of. So, you've had radical ideas. You've kept everything on top so far. Niv Mizzet is obviously a concern. I think our best answer to that is Cleansing Nova, which is not what I'd call a clean answer. Jeez. Does our opponent really feel like they have to respond to everything we do? Because, I don't know. I don't know what world I would counter this in. And you certainly don't need to play a radical idea in response to it, I don't think. But who knows? Maybe I'm missing something. I can be wrong. It's okay. Do it all the time. You could say it's a hobby. I could make a 4/4, but I don't think that will go very well. And I'm definitely nervous here. If the opponent just goes for a Niv, they don't even know how in trouble I am. Teferi can tuck it as well, but we haven't drawn a Teferi. What are we on? 4 cards in the graveyard? How am I going to fill this thing? Alright, no Niv this time. They binned another Azkanta, so they're definitely a dedicated, like, blue-red control deck, I'd say. I mean, do I want this? Counters are, of course, good in the counterspell war, but I can't counter Niv, and my opponent's not giving me anything to counter. I'm actually going to graveyard it and try to get deeper in the deck to flip this faster. A little ambitious, I'm sure, but I think I have to do that. I think in a weird way it's the right play. Because it's one thing I have on my opponent is I have 6 cards in my graveyard. They have 2. I can get this going a lot sooner and make sure I have the right answers when Niv comes around. Definitely not a seal away guy. Teferi, yes please. Although when to play it is going to be tricky. Let's transform you. There's the Nova. Trying to blow up my opponent's Azkanta is an interesting way to do the things, but again, there's just, it's not flipping. If I go for the Teferi, we have counter backup, but if our opponent has 2 counters, that's over and done with. But I have his Azkanta now, so I should probably push it. I could also try to blow up my opponent's search for his Azkanta. I think they might fight over that. Yeah, let's see what they do here. It does... The other problem is Niv, of course, if they have that. But I think that if I'm going to start a fight, this is the card to do it with. We could also just make the 4/4 and make the opponent kill it, but that just lets them flip their Azkanta faster. See what you do. They feel like a deck that should have counterspells, but they haven't shown us counterspells. Okay, here's an opt. Keeps on top. They've kept everything on top, so you'd think their hand was pristine, but maybe they have another search. I guess we'll see. I guess that's for an opt. Okay. They bin another Azkanta? They must have another Azkanta. It's the only thing that makes sense. Maybe this is a 1,000-Year Storm deck. That's not something I'd considered till now, but the mission briefing implies that it might be that. Okay. Let's try you. See what happens. Alright, we've got a sabotage. Let's fight. Resolves.
Sorry I'm late.
Uh-huh.
We need to move quickly.
Let's untap these, and now we have negate. Our opponent's going to try to burn through the Teferi. I guess I may as I don't have to fight over that. I have another one. I drew another one. It's wonderful. There's Niv. Had a feeling you were coming eventually. So this is going to be tough. Let's... Well, if we counter it, the opponent can just target Niv, like, at Teferi twice. Let's see if they target me or Teferi anyway. Okay, they target me. So I could counter this, and then I get one more use out of Teferi before it dies. That's basically changing my negate to draw a card and giving my opponent a card, so it's not worth it. So we'll pass turn. And we'll play another Teferi. And we'll tuck away the Niv for now. Hope to buy a few turns to find another Cleansing Nova or something. Let's opt and see if we can get there. Memorial to Genius. Plus Teferi. Alright, again, we really just want to dig up a Cleansing Nova. Making a Warden token is something. It might deflect some attention, but I mostly want to be using his Kanta to dig as far as I can. So if I do that on my turn and then my opponent's turn. So untap 2, that gives me 6. I guess having 7 available would be nice. I don't know when this Memorial to Genius would happen, so I should probably play an untapped land. It's hard to Memorial to Genius until you have a ton of mana if you're also activating his Kanta. And there it is, waiting on top of the deck to torture me. Let's go find the right answer. Blink of an eye, Warrant Warden, Absorb, Opt. The opponent's going to scoop it up. I could keep finding more Teferis, but I could also find the Nova eventually, and they've had enough. This is a good opener, I think. Let's try it out. We got the Guild Gate on 1, the Iskanta on 2, and then we're just going to die to Curious Obsession. It'll be awesome. Nah, yeah, we'll try to put up a fight here. We'll see what happens. Settle is particularly bad against Siren Storm Tamer, who can counter it all by itself. Let's start graveyarding some cards. Let's have Absorb available. No, thank you. So our counters are very ineffective against them, mostly because they have cheap counters and we have expensive ones. So anytime I get to play an Absorb, I usually just play it, is my strategy against blue. This is kind of like cycling it for free if I don't care about the life, and I guess I really don't. I'd rather have a different draw, and there we go. So our opponent only has one creature out. I could go after it. I'd rather start that fight on my opponent's turn, particularly on their end step. Okay, another Trickster. How fun. Alright, let's see if we can draw a counter spell out of the opponent, or if they want to sack their Siren Storm Tamer. Either way, it gets something off the board, and I don't mind if they sack the Storm Tamer, because then they don't get the land. Graveyard that. And plenty of mana to go around here. I'd rather start a seal away fight on my opponent's turn if I'm going to make that play. Another Storm Tamer is obnoxious. The opponent keeps coming though. Let's see what you got. Ooh, let's try negating it. See how much the opponent wants to fight over it. This has the added benefit of getting the negate into the graveyard now, so we can flip the Iskanta. And the opponent, it's now their job to put plenty of pressure on me. We've gone through 2 dive downs. Let's try countering that. Bing. And let's search up. There's a Settle the Wreckage. As long as we're trying to remove something every turn, the game kind of moves in our direction. The opponent can't fight it all off forever. Not all of it. I could wait a turn and just search. I think I'd rather do that. I think I'd rather Iskanta. I can take some damage to Iskanta here. Teferi. And I could go for the Teferi, but I'll say go and try to start a fight for the Settle the Wreckage, and then see if we can resolve the Teferi after that. Plus we get to use Iskanta in that turn cycle as well. I always kind of start counting in groups of 4. It's like, what can I do this turn that lets me use Iskanta and cast a spell? So, my turn. Let's keep it coming. So we can try to make the 4/4, but that's a big liability against cards like Entrancing Melody, so I don't think that's the right play. I could push out the Teferi, the opponent will counter it. I think I can wait on that. I think that this turn is Warrant Warden, Opt, or a Warrant, Opt, and Iskanta. I think that's how I can best use my turn. Here they comes. Warrant you. There's such a warrant out for your arrest. Dive to the down. Let's try an Opt and see what we see. Sure, but I'm not going to use it this turn. I'm going to Iskanta instead. Alright, keep it coming. Another Warrant Warden to keep the pressure on the opponent to keep their attackers fresh. Another Opt. Yeah, we just run it back over and over. Yes, the opponent's gained 2 damage in, but every land they draw or every card they draw that isn't effective is time for us. And it looks like they might say go. Tempest Shin. Well, let's start with an Iskanta activation and see what we see. There's an Absorb. It plays around Spell Pierce right now. We could also take a Cleansing Nova, but if the opponent has a counter, that's no good. So, let's Absorb you. And let's have another Opt. Revitalize is fine. A little bit more time, a little deeper in the deck. The opponent knows that if they have a counter here and they don't counter the Teferi, they're failing pretty hard. So I could play the Teferi, or we could keep working the Iskanta. And I think that working the Iskanta is fine. We're getting ahead that way. Alright, warrant that. Making them draw that again is one less good card that they could be drawing. They say go. Let's try the Iskanta. Let's get Nova, I suppose. Now the opponent knows about that, but it's not that many ways to play around Nova that don't involve giving me more and more and more time. Alright, the opponent can only play 1 counter. If I do this and this, they could have a Spell Pierce, but I think we'll give this a try. It's time to put pressure on them. What can they do? Untap and deploy their hand? Not so much. See if they have a Spell Pierce here as well. Because we can always find another Teferi.
I won't hide from the world any longer. Hold that thought.
And that's going to be the scoop from the blue deck. I think there's some good stuff in that game about casting your spells at the blue deck even when you know they're going to be countered. Just to keep the pressure on them. Well, this is a tough hand to keep, because if we don't draw land, it's terrible. And with what we have, only negate is playable, which is very suspect. This might do a lot more. I'm at risk of flood, so I think I bottom that. I also think, yeah, let's just play this tapped. On the play, I don't feel like I need to start sculpting my hand immediately. Forsaken Sanctuary. Alright, let's play untapped land. You never know when negate might be needed. Tithe Taker. Ouch. So, in response, I better revitalize now. That is a card that got printed and really hurt this deck. I'm going to be totally honest with you on that one. It really hurt this deck. So we need to pay the 2 life here just to have negate available. This is where black with their cheap removal would be high quality. Oh, alright. Well, whatever's going on here is going to be very hard to beat. Yuck. This has been rough. Alright. It's been a land-heavy draw. Cleansing Nova is going to make them draw a bunch of cards, so I might have to do something bizarre like Teferi minus Midnight Reaper then Nova, but even then it leaves another 1/1 on the battlefield. I'm in a lot of trouble. There's no question about that. Alright, there's no choice. I have to blow up the board. Although, I don't know. Priest doesn't affect me the same way. And blowing up this board, though, is so good for my opponent. I could play Teferi and just try to stall and let Teferi take a beating. Poor Teferi. I guess I'll just make my opponent rebuild. I hate it, but those are some really annoying creatures they had there. I mean, they give me the oops, but I know exactly what's going on, and I don't love it, but those creatures were as annoying on the battlefield as anything could be. I'm sure the opponent can rebuild, but if it's more creatures, then, well, they need enough to challenge Teferi, and maybe I can draw into ways to protect it, rather than running it out there to its rather than running my Time Lord out there to his doom. There's a Midnight Reaper. There's an Enforcer. Okay, that's 5 total damage to attack Teferi. We need to draw a Seal Away, a Warrant Warden, a Settle the Wreckage, and I guess I'll try to top deck it.
If you show remorse, I'll show
Clutch. Ooh, I should have played the untapped land to play around another Tithe Taker. Ah, I hope I'm not punished. Don't punish me. Please don't punish me. I should have played around another Tithe Taker. I can't seal something away if the opponent has a Tithe Taker here. Stare for the scales. Alright. Annoying. But we're just trying to draw settles. Settle, settle, settle. Look at all the stuff you're putting on the board. Holy crap. Alright, let's lock away that Midnight Reaper. Have another turn. There we go. Have another turn of Teferi Bliss.
I'm not done yet.
I'm going to revitalize now and then untap the lands. And now things are looking much prettier. Much, much prettier. So you're telling me there's a chance. Mortify? Let's not. I don't know what else we might hit with the negate in the matchup. I run Conclave Tribunal in my version of this, and they may also have a card like Divine Visitation, but keeping the Midnight Reaper away from the board can't be too bad of an idea. Is the opponent going to run the Priest to draw the cards? That's kind of interesting since they've seen Cleansing Nova, and they should know what could happen if they do that. Alright. I also didn't activate Vigilance, which I would have done having seen Seal Away. Alright, but anyway, here's the settle. The opponent can sacrifice the Seraph and the Enforcer in response so they get the 1/1s rather than the lands, but they don't do it. Okay. If you're ever in that situation, I think it would be better to sacrifice the Seraph and the Enforcer to the Priest of the Forgotten Gods to make 1/1s. I don't know their hand, though. Maybe I'm missing something.
Let's skip to the good part.
There's an Iskanta, 6 cards in graveyard. I don't want to make the 4/4 because the Priest of the Forgotten Gods can make me sacrifice it rather easily, so we'll hold up on the Warden instead. Pass with all this open mana. Tide Taker is so obnoxious. We could sacrifice Memorial to Genius now, but I don't think it's going to matter too much. I'm not even sure if I'm going to use the Warrant to protect Teferi. Rather use it on the Tide Taker. Vraska's Contempt. Sure. Well, now if I draw a negate, it doesn't do any good, so I may as well let that go.
Just let me know if you're up for round 2.
Always up for round 2, my friend. Always up for round 2. Alright, they get busy. I don't think I want to warrant them, though. I could warrant the Priest. I think I'd rather just draw the 2 cards. Nova. I don't need another land, so we'll graveyard you and transform. If I Nova this board, the opponent still has 2 1/1s. Nova is my worst removal spell, though, and it gets even worse when they draw cards like Midnight Reaper and Teysa, so may as well get it done. I can't do that and activate the Iskanta, though. I could always warrant the Tide Taker and activate the Iskanta and get deeper in the deck that way. 1, 2, 3. That would also let me opt. I think I like that. Yeah, it just gets warmer and warmer out here. Maybe I'll be able to find a Settle the Wreckage. And maybe the opponent will use that Priest of the Forgotten Gods to sacrifice the creatures. Maybe. If they do that, then the Nova gets a lot better. Well, there you go. That makes 2 mana and draws a card. It's hard to tell if that's really worth it. They have seen the Nova, so they know I play it. They also know about Settle. Okay. Right now, the only death benefit is Tide Taker, which I plan to Warden, or to Warrant, so that's good, if they attack with it. They do attack with it. Alright, put that on top, please. Now we can opt. Blink of an Eye. That can be pretty useful against this deck. There's plenty of times where they want things to die, but don't necessarily want them to bounce. I could grab the Absorb, the Seal Aways, or the Warrants. It's an interesting mix of 4. I'll take the Absorb because the other cards require the opponent to attack, and they'll know about them in my hand. So there's Nova, all creatures down. And we'll hold the Absorb here for the Tide Taker. And now with the opponent on 0, Teferi can make his return, bringing pain and misery.
I have no time for a break.
And no time for a break, of course. Tilting off mages who don't like control decks everywhere. Teferi the Time Mage. Hey, he said to let him know if we're up for round 2.
You know what? I'm not done yet.
Alright, now we're on double as Iskanta Trick Lock. And we'll just grab more Absorbs. Eventually we can grab one of those Warrant Wardens that's still in the deck, make the 4/4 and go into beatdown mode. I just like to grab all my counter spells first, just in case the opponent can hit running removal spells. And I don't... yeah, I may as well search, but I don't even know if I'll put anything in my hand. Like, I'm just going to decline. Keep the deck, keep cards in the deck. Takes the pressure of me decking off of myself. And I'll just do something stupid, like run out the Seal Away to nobody. I can bounce it back later with a blink of an eye if it's on the battlefield. Like, you can bounce it, draw a card, then replay it. So that's better than discarding it in that specific spot, especially with the free mana from Teferi. I know all the blue-white tricks, I think. Of course, as soon as you say that, you're probably wrong. That doesn't scare me. I can blink that multiple times if I would need to. Not what I meant to do, but okay. And decline. Just keep those in the deck.
Keep up the pace.
Alright, we'll play you, and may as well play you. A second one is decent, you just don't transform it. You just kind of scry your way through the deck, even though I don't really want to graveyard anything. Alright, I'll show you the blink of an eye trick. Blink your Seal Away, and seal away the opponent's thingy. Seraph of the Scales. I can exile it when Teferi ultimates. It's fine. And because my Teferi's on ultimate, I'm just going to leave counter magic up and not activate his Kanta. And library's fine. Decline. And ultimate.
I'm sorry I have to do this.
Yeah, at this point I do get pretty sorry that I have to do things like this.
I can no longer stand by and block. Let's skip to the good part.
Alright, let's mill ya. The opponent has seen a Warrant Warden, right? So they know that we have win cons. They don't know how many we have. They might think we just play one, and then they hope that we get 2 board to win, but that's not the case. We have more in our deck. We know where they are because of his Kanta. There's one coming right up. So we'll make a 4/4 and start the beating. But the opponent's going to scoop it. Okay, we have some early removal stuff in a counter. Let's try it. So Fairies was a blue and often blue-black tempo deck back in the day. When I see Fairies for the win, I immediately think they're playing mono-blue tempo, and then I'm immediately wrong. Is it a mirror? Oh, it's not a mirror. That can be annoying, though. If the opponent never attacks with their hero, it can do a lot of nasty stuff. So Esper Midrange. This can be a very tough matchup because of the Thought Erasures and Thief of Sanities and just the disruptive elements of the deck. I'm really curious to see how it goes. And the opponent found their mana. Alright, let's seal away that hero. They also run Mortify, which is good against Seal Away. Can be a very difficult matchup. I really want to draw my negates and my Teferis pretty early on. I'm trying to ignore this token. Thief of Sanity. Well, I could counter it, but I also have multiple ways to remove it in combat, and the only way it's effective is in combat, so that's fine. Play you. Let's play an untapped land. We might need to like do a Seal Away Absorb or something like that. Now, the opponent might go for a Mortify here on the Seal Away. So we have two options. We could warrant the Thief of Sanity or absorb the Mortify. I think it is much better to absorb the Mortify, because the warrant just means the opponent gets to draw, replay Thief, and we're in the exact same spot in the future, where using the absorb right this minute sort of takes care of the problem for a while. There's our Memorial to the Genius. Here's another Thief. Fun. So now I want to find a way to force through my Settle the Wreckage. And I don't think the opponent has a counterspell per se. They probably don't run something like Absorb. But I'm very wary of a Thought Erasure. I think the best thing I can do while my opponent is mana constrained is bounce this Thief and buy another turn. Because then I can use my Memorial to Genius and untap from there, maybe have a Negate or an Absorb to back up my Settle the Wreckage. Okay. Thief returns. Alright, let's do this. And another Seal Away and another Blink of an Eye. It's pretty good. Let's go for... do I go for his Kanta here? There's only 3 cards in my graveyard, and I have a lot of other things to do with my mana, so I don't think I go for his Kanta here. I need a backup in case I can't get rid of the Thief. Shall we see if they have another Mortify, or shall we test Settle the Wreckage? They seem constrained on mana, so I'd hate to settle them here. And if they have a Mortify, or if they just run an Absorb or Negate or something, this is a good way to get it out of my opponent. Okay. Didn't happen. Hero Precinct 1 returns. Alright. They also don't run many basics, so this Settle is probably pretty good. I often forget that about this deck, is how few basics they run, sometimes absolute 0. Alright, my turn. Let's use a Revitalize. There's a Teferi. If we draw a land, we can Teferi and Settle. And the opponent is pretty tapped low, so it seems like a good time to resolve it. The problem with that is if we miss the land, I guess Teferi doesn't necessarily die, plus we have Warrant to defend it, so that's all fine. I honestly wish I could go back and never crack that Memorial to Genius, though.
This isn't a fight. You've no time for a break.
And I also think if I were building the deck again, I would take Memorial out of the deck. The only times I've cracked it, I've been pretty unhappy to go down a land and put that much mana into it. Whereas I've been really happy with Search for Azkanta. And Revitalize and Opt have done a good job keeping me alive and getting me to my Teferi situations that I like. So I would pull these from the deck. I'd at least try it without them. Alright. Don't have a counter for that. All the Thieves, huh? I think I let this attack go. I want something to back up the Settle the Wreckage if my opponent hits me with a Thought Erasure next turn, so that the Thief doesn't get me. I guess I have Blink of an Eye for that. Yeah, and my opponent hasn't had a Thought Erasure, so I can make sure they don't draw one with this Warrant. It does keep my opponent from drawing a Thought Erasure. Hesitation here. What do you suppose they have to play?
Time for plan B.
It's a land and go. Is that a cast down, perhaps? Or a Moment of Craving might be in their hand?
We need to move quickly.
Another Settle. Now we can deploy his Kanta basically for free. Opponent draws the hero and sends in the troops, I'm sure. Hold your breath, right? Now let's see how many basic lands they play. Okay, they do run 2. They're not absolute mad lads. Teferi of your own. Charming. gutsy play in the face of... That's
Thank me later.
very gutsy play. Alright. Right into the face of an Absorb. So, I'm on 6. I can go to 7 with the Revitalize. I don't think I need to bounce this Teferi. I can tuck it. But it would be much better, of course, to find an Absorb to counter it on the way back. I think this is fine. It lets me dig for just 1 mana. So, Library, Transform, and land. So we know there's a Teferi on top of the deck, which is probably a good opt, but it also makes sure our Azcanta hits if we use it. We can play this Teferi and tuck my opponent's Teferi. Hard to complain about that. We could also plus this Teferi, which I think is just getting further ahead. Letting my opponent draw a card while I have his Kanta is...
Let's slow this down. Hold that thought.
Yeah, I've got the duo. My opponent just has 1 Teferi, and they're trying to ride that to victory. I think plussing my Teferi is fine. The opponent, if they don't want to get ultimated, may have to suicide their Teferi.
We need to move quickly.
Let's see what happens. Hero. They're holding out for a hero till the end of the night. Here's another one. Prepare for 1/1s. Oh my. So much beef. Let's go ahead and use his Kanta. There's a negate. That can be very helpful. You can fight with that. And let's use an opt. Looking for a Cleansing Nova. Another negate. Plus this Teferi.
Keep up the pace.
So negates are primarily for the thought erasures, if you're wondering what exactly I'm holding negate and keeping in mind. So I could, yeah, I think I'll go ahead and use an Azcanta now. There's an Absorb. Oh boy. Oh boy. Just trying to see if I am sure I have enough white mana to do all of the things I might want to do. Turns out I do.
Let's skip to the good part.
Never hurts to make sure. Disinformation Campaign. That's an annoying card. And they throw it out in the face of a negate. I think I let that go. What would I discard? The Warrant? How many left do I have? I'd still have 1 left after that. Yeah, let's let this go. Now this attack is really tricky. Oh, the opponent's moving in. Alright. What you got? Scoops. That's what they've got. They got the scoops. I'm going to leave this video at 4 wins and 2 losses. I've had some comments saying show the losses, or people accusing me of not showing losses. I will always show losses if they're interesting back and forth games that don't come down to mana screw or bad draws. In this case, I will satisfy your curiosity once, but most of the time I'm not going to bother, to be honest. I lose a lot of games to mana screw and clunky draws and mana flood just like everybody else. Today we lost to a Merfolk deck that curved out and I never cast a spell because my hand was awkward and had counter spells that didn't touch anything, like negates. The second loss, I never drew a 3rd land. So those are not included in the video. This is to better use your time as well as make me feel better about the quality of product I put out there. All right, so with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoy blue-white control. It's always a deck that speaks to me. The first tournament I ever won in my life was with a blue-white control deck using Millstone way back in the day. It had 4 Wrath of Gods, 4 counterspells, 4 Swords to Plowshares. It even had Icy Manipulator and Strip Mine to play land destruction if it wanted to. So Playing some blue-white control always takes me back. You can hate Teferi all you want, but it will always appeal to a part of the audience, and Magic's better with all of us in it. Just a reminder, shill for the day, some arena and shill. The St. Patrick's Day sale is going on over at flipsidegaming.com. Your promo code CGB will get you 15% off instead of just 10% off. That is March 15th through the 18th, so please use the promo code CGB on flipsidegaming.com. Thank you for watching this video. As always, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, or leave a comment. You can also support the channel on Patreon for special perks. Links are in the description. Our sponsors are hauntedflower.com and flipsidegaming.com. Haunted Flower sells officially licensed MTG apparel and accessories, and Flipside Gaming sells MTG cards and supplies. You can save 10% on either site with the promo code CGB, and it supports the channel at the same time. See you next time for another day in the arena. For now, it's me, it's CGB, signing out.